Let me ask you something. What happens when $230 million lines up under center on the first day of training camp and the field doesn't care? What happens when the most expensive investment in NFL history, an investment that cost this franchise 3 first-round picks, 3 years of irrelevance, 2 torn Achilles tendons, and an entire fan base's faith, throws back-to-back interceptions in 11-on-11 drills, while a second-year kid from the 5th round of the draft is out there making plays? What happens is exactly what happened in Berea, Ohio on July 29, 2026, day 1 of Cleveland Browns training camp. And if you're a football fan, Browns fan or not, you need to understand what went down on that practice field, what Todd Monken said at that podium afterward, and what all of it means for Shedeur Sanders and the future of this franchise. Because the field talked on day 1, loudly, and it had absolutely nothing good to say about the status quo. We are going to break all of it down right here. Watson's 2 interceptions, Shedeur's performance, Monken's press conference quotes that every single person watching this competition needs to hear, the Deion Sanders visit on day 2, the rep structure formula that Monken handed you on a silver platter, and the bigger picture that nobody wants to say out loud, but that the tape is already screaming at us. This is everything you need to know. Let's get into it. Before we even get into what happened on that practice field, you have to understand the weight of the situation Shedeur Sanders is walking into. You have to understand exactly what he is competing against, because this is not a normal quarterback competition. This is not 2 guys with equal footing fighting for a job. This is a young man trying to wrestle a starting spot away from one of the most expensive mistakes in the history of professional sports. In March of 2022, the Cleveland Browns made a decision that will live in NFL infamy. They traded 3 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and additional selections to the Houston Texans to acquire Deshaun Watson. And then, as if the picks were not enough, they handed him a 5-year, $230 million contract, every single dollar of it fully guaranteed. That was not just the biggest guaranteed contract in NFL history at the time. That was a number so staggering, so unprecedented, that it reset the market for every quarterback who came after him. $230 million, fully guaranteed. No outs, no escape hatch. Just a franchise betting its entire future on one player and one decision. And how has it gone? Watson has started 19 games in 4 seasons with the Browns. 19 games! He missed 11 games in 2022 due to suspension. He dealt with injury in 2023. He tore his Achilles tendon in Week 7 of the 2024 season and missed the rest of that year. Then he re-tore that same Achilles early in 2025 and missed that entire season too. While Watson sat, the Browns went through Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and eventually Shedeur Sanders, a 5th-round rookie, just trying to field a competent offense. NFL expert Mike Florio called the Watson acquisition one of the worst transactions in NFL history when you consider everything Cleveland gave up. Bleacher Report named Watson the most overpaid quarterback in the league heading into 2026, and Watson himself ranks 9th at his position in cash earnings this season, 9th, which tells you everything about how far the perception of his value has fallen since that blockbuster deal was signed. Here is where it gets really uncomfortable for the people who want to hand Watson the starting status based on contract status alone. This is the final year of that $230 million deal. Watson is heading into 2026 as a lame duck quarterback at the back end of a contract the Browns cannot wait to be done with. The franchise gave up 3 first-rounders to get him. They're going to be paying his dead cap hit for years. And now, after all of that, after 2 Achilles tears, a suspension, 19 total starts, and a 9-10 win-loss record as a starter, they need to decide whether Watson or a second-year kid from the 5th round is their guy going forward.
And on day 1 of training camp, with every reporter in Cleveland watching, with Todd Monken standing right there on the field evaluating every single rep, Deshaun Watson walked out and threw 2 interceptions in 11-on-11 drills. Not in a playoff game, not in a preseason game, not even in a padded practice. Day 1. no pads, and Watson came out throwing the ball to the wrong team. That is where we are. That is what Shedeur Sanders is competing against, and that is why what happened on day one matters more than most people are willing to admit. To really appreciate what Shedeur Sanders is doing right now, you have to go back to April of 2025, because what happened to him in that draft room is something that still does not sit right with a lot of people who watched it unfold in real time. Shedeur Sanders came out of Colorado as arguably one of the most scrutinized quarterback prospects in recent memory. He played for his father, Deion Sanders, at both Jackson State and Colorado. He put up massive numbers at the college level. He had the arm talent, the poise, the football IQ that scouts talk about wanting in franchise quarterbacks. And heading into that draft, there were analysts and evaluators who had him as a top 5 pick, maybe higher. Then something happened on draft night that nobody fully explained. Shedeur fell and kept falling. Teams passed on him round after round. By the time the 5th round rolled around, Shedeur Sanders, a player who had been discussed in the same breath as the #1 overall pick, was still sitting there. The Browns eventually took him at pick 144. Not 1st round, not 2nd, not 3rd or 4th, 5th round, 144th overall. The narrative that immediately formed around that slide was brutal. People said he had attitude issues. People said his numbers were inflated by playing in a spread system. People said he was not ready for the NFL. And people said that wherever he landed, he was going to need years to develop before he was anywhere near a starting role. The Browns had a different experience with him almost immediately. When Shedeur stepped in for Dillon Gabriel in Week 11 of the 2025 season, he made 7 starts and finished the year 3-4 with 7 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Not a Pro Bowl season, but for a 5th-round rookie thrown into a broken offense with minimal weapons and no real runway to prepare, it was enough. It was enough for the people watching up close to see something real. General Manager Andrew Berry saw it. Just one day after the 2025 season ended, Berry called Shedeur a work in progress, which, yes, sounds like a lukewarm endorsement, but here is what is important. By the time the off-season workout program wrapped up in the spring of 2026, Berry's language had completely changed. He went on 92.3 The Fan and described Shedeur's growth as phenomenal. He said Sanders had an excellent spring. He said the growth from January through the end of OTAs had been tremendous. He said everyone in the building was excited to see Shedeur in a padded training camp environment. That is not the kind of language you use about a player who's just along for the ride. That is the language of an organization that watched a young quarterback put in the work and come back a different player. Todd Monken, the brand new head coach entering his first training camp, went even further publicly. He praised what he called Shedeur's elite playmaking ability before a single camp practice had been held. He saw the deep ball. He saw the decision-making. He saw a quarterback who had bought in completely, moved to Cleveland full-time, and treated this competition like the most important thing in his life. Because for Shedeur, it is. He said it himself. He has a house in Cleveland. He's comfortable there. This is not a pit stop for him. This is his proving ground. And on day one of training camp, with Watson throwing picks on the other field, Shedeur Sanders went out and proved something. Now, let's get into the tape, because this is where things stop being narrative and start being facts. Todd Monken had made it clear coming into camp that both Watson and Shedeur would split first-team reps throughout training camp. That was the plan. Alternate with the ones, let the competition play out, let the field decide. But on day one, Watson got the first crack with the first-team offense. That's important context. Watson had the advantage of running with the starters right out of the gate. And what did he do with it? In the first 11-on-11 drills of training camp, Watson threw back-to-back interceptions. The first one went to Denzel Ward, the cornerback who had just signed a massive contract extension with the Browns and who was widely considered one of the better corners in the league. The second pick went to Damari Mathis, back-to-back interceptions in non-padded drills on the first day of camp. Watson nearly gave up a third. Linebacker Carson Schwessinger got a hand on an underneath route and the ball fell incomplete. The unofficial count from reporters on the field had Watson finishing the day with 15 completions, 11 incompletions, and those 2 picks. He had a decent 7-on-7 session where he completed 7 of 10 passes, but 7-on-7 is a controlled environment. It's not where games are won. The 11-on-11 work is where you see reality, and in that reality, Watson had a rough first day.
Here is what makes it more uncomfortable. Denzel Ward did not sneak up on anyone. Watson knew where the corners were. The first interception came on what Monken later described as a bootleg play, where he said Ward made a great play, but he also said that with Ward's tracking speed, you simply cannot be late with throws. The second interception came on what Monken called a dig route, where Watson was late on the decision. A late throw on a dig. That is not a Denzel Ward special teams moment. That is a quarterback processing the field too slowly. Now, and this is important, Monken did his best to put a positive spin on Watson's day after practice when speaking to reporters. He said a lot of day one was quick game install. He said the interceptions were partly situational. He did not throw Watson under the bus publicly. That is what a head coach does. You do not blow up your starting quarterback competition on day one with a press conference funeral for one guy. But here is what Monken also did not say. He did not say Watson looked sharp. He did not say Watson looked ready. He did not say Watson had shown him anything that changed the picture of this competition. He said the players decide. He said his eyes are the judge, and his eyes saw what everyone else saw. Meanwhile, on a separate field, Shedeur Sanders was out there with the second team. He was crisp, he was connecting, he was making plays with the poise that his coaches had been talking about all spring. No fireworks, no dramatic highlight moment, just clean, efficient, confident quarterbacking from a second-year player who had spent the entire offseason preparing for exactly this moment. One day, one practice, 2 completely different pictures. The field was already talking. Now let's go to the press conference, because this is where things move from interesting to genuinely important. Todd Monken stepped to the podium after day one of training camp, and the reporters came at him immediately about the quarterback competition. And what Monken said, specifically, precisely, word for word, is something every single person watching this situation needs to hear. Because he did not just answer questions, he handed you a roadmap. First quote, and this one matters enormously. When asked who decides the starting quarterback, Monken said, "I'm not going to decide who the starter is. They decide by their play. Their play decides who the starter is. I don't have any preconceived notions of how they have played in the past or how they're going to play. I only can, with my eyes, judge." Read that again slowly. He said he does not have preconceived notions about how they have played in the past. That means the Watson contract does not factor in. The draft position does not factor in. The narrative that this was always Watson's job to lose does not factor in. Monken says the past does not exist when he is making this evaluation. What exists is what he sees with his eyes on that practice field. And what did his eyes see on day one? Watson throwing interceptions, Shedeur making plays. There's a natural question that follows that. A lot of people want to say, okay, fine, but the front office is going to override whatever the competition produces and just hand Watson the job because of the contract, because of the investment, because of the politics of the situation. That concern is real. That concern has been floating around Browns fan circles all offseason, and I understand it. But here is what I keep coming back to. Todd Monken is a first-year head coach. This is his first training camp as a head coach in the NFL.
This is a man who waited his entire career for this opportunity. He said publicly that this is a dream come true. He is not going to compromise that dream by putting a quarterback under center who's throwing picks in non-padded day one drills. That would be career-limiting behavior for a new head coach. Monken has every incentive to put the best quarterback on the field and zero incentive to play politics with a roster decision that will define his first season. He also said something else at that podium that gives you the formula for how to track this competition going forward. A reporter pressed him on the rep distribution, specifically whether we would start to see one quarterback trending toward more first-team reps as camp goes on. Monken's answer was direct. He said, "It's possible, but I don't decide that. The players will decide that. As camp goes and you start to see less rotation, if you start to see individual players at every position get more reps with the ones, that's a pretty good sign they are the one."
He literally just told you the scoreboard. He handed you the formula. Watch the reps. The guy getting more first-team work as camp progresses is the guy Monken sees as his starter. It is that simple. He said it out loud at a press conference with every reporter in Cleveland sitting there. So here's the question every Browns fan should be sitting with right now. If day one looks like Watson throwing back-to-back picks and Shedeur making plays, how many more days like that does it take before the reps start shifting? Because Monken just told you they can shift. He said the players decide when that happens by their performance. And the performance on day one already started telling that story. One more thing Monken confirmed at the podium. He said the Browns will play starters in the preseason. He is not going to back himself into a corner, but he plans on playing his guys. He wants to see what he has, especially at quarterback. That means Shedeur Sanders is going to get preseason snaps with the first team. And if he performs in those games the way he performed on day one of camp, that preseason competition is going to be must-watch television for every NFL fan in the country. The roadmap is laid out, the competition is real, and the coach just told you exactly how to read the results. Day 2 of Browns training camp, July 30th, 2026, and it already came with a guest appearance that had everyone in Berea talking before a single snap was taken. You do not miss Deshaun Sanders walking onto your practice facility. The man walks into a room, or in this case, an outdoor practice field in Cleveland, Ohio, and everyone notices. He came in wearing his trademark cowboy hat, and the moment he arrived, the energy shifted. Not in a distracting way, not in a circus way, but in a way that said something. Deshaun Sanders was not visiting just as a father. He was visiting as a football man who built his son into the quarterback standing on that field, and he wanted to see for himself what this competition looked like up close. Before practice, Deshaun met with Todd Monken. Monken told reporters afterward that Deshaun offered what he called a little bit of insight on Shedeur. Think about what that means for a second. Here is a Pro Football Hall of Famer, one of the greatest defensive players in NFL history, a man who also had an MLB career, sitting down with Monken and talking about his son's game, his strengths, how he processes pressure, what makes him tick. Monken said the meeting was awesome. He said he was a fan not just of Deshaun the player, but Deshaun the coach, and that having that conversation was genuinely valuable. And then Shedeur went out and took first-team reps on day 2. He alternated with the starters as Monken had promised, and while the offense got off to a slow start, some disjointed passing, some procedural issues, Sanders found his rhythm as practice went on. He was clicking with receivers late in the session, the rust was shaking off, and his father was watching every single rep from the sideline. After practice, Deshaun came down onto the field. He spent time with players, he talked to people, and then he walked off with his son, just the two of them, heading toward the locker room. The image of that, father and son, after a day of work, walking side by side on an NFL practice field, said everything without saying a word. This family does not take shortcuts. They built something together, and they are not done yet. Here's what I think the Deshaun visit means beyond the optics. It means Shedeur Sanders is not in this alone. He has a support system around him that most NFL players cannot match.
His father is one of the most football-intelligent people who has ever lived. His father coached him through high school, through Jackson State, through Colorado, and prepared him for exactly the environment he's in right now. The draft slide, the doubt, the people writing him off. Deshaun has probably been preparing Shedeur for all of it since the day the kid first touched a football. And now Deshaun came to Cleveland to see it for himself, to look Monken in the eye, to watch his son take first-team reps in a legitimate NFL quarterback competition, and to remind everyone, without saying a word, that the Sanders family did not come this far to fold. That means something. Don't let anyone tell you it doesn't. Here's the part of this story that I think gets lost when people focus only on the football. Because there's a layer to what Shedeur Sanders is dealing with that goes beyond just beating out Deshaun Watson for a starting job. Shedeur Sanders has been fighting a narrative since before he was drafted, a narrative that was built around him, not by him, and not based on anything he did on the field. He was called a product of his father's system. People said his college numbers were inflated. People said he couldn't handle the NFL pressure. They pointed to the draft slide as proof of something wrong with him, even though team after team passed on him for reasons that had nothing to do with his arm or his football brain.
And when he made 7 starts as a rookie in 2025, some people were ready to write him off based on a 3-4 record and 10 interceptions, without acknowledging that he was a 5th-round pick thrown into the starting lineup mid-season for a 5-12 football team with one of the worst receiving corps in the league. The Browns' wide receivers averaged just 86.3 receiving yards per game in 2025, the fewest by any team since the 2011 Jacksonville Jaguars. He was operating with nothing, and people still expected him to look like Patrick Mahomes. That narrative has followed him into this training camp, and every single rep Shedeur takes with the first team, every connection he makes with a receiver, every clean decision he makes under pressure is another data point that chips away at what people decided about him before he ever took a professional snap. Meanwhile, look at what is on the other side of that equation. Watson is not just struggling against the competition of a younger quarterback, he's struggling against his own history. He has started 19 games over 4 seasons. He's been suspended, injured, and absent for stretches of time that would have killed the development of any franchise that relied on him. He's coming back from not 1, but 2 torn Achilles tendons. He has not played a regular season game in over 600 days, and he's in the final year of a contract that the organization cannot wait to see end. The Browns are not going to offer Watson a second contract. Everyone in that building knows it. Everyone in Cleveland knows it. Watson's future in the NFL almost certainly does not include the city of Cleveland after this season. That means the front office has every logical reason in the world to find out right now whether Shedeur Sanders is their answer at quarterback going forward. Because if he is, and they delay giving him the job, they waste an entire season. And if he is not, they need to know that too so they can address the position in the 2027 draft, which, by all accounts, is expected to be an elite quarterback class. The math points toward Shedeur getting a real shot. The performance on day 1 points toward Shedeur earning that shot. And the head coach's own words point toward a competition where the play, not the politics, makes the decision. But none of that changes the fact that Shedeur is still fighting uphill, still fighting a narrative that people invested in, still proving something to reporters and analysts who decided what he was before they gave him a real chance to show them. Every practice, every snap, every clean throw in this competition is part of that fight, and day 1 belonged to him. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about what the next few weeks of training camp are actually going to look like, because Monken gave you the formula, and it is worth making sure you fully understand what to watch for. Right now, Watson and Shedeur are alternating first-team reps. That is what Monken confirmed. They are splitting the ones just like they did throughout the spring.
In a perfect world camp scenario, Monken said he would want the first team getting 50% of the reps, the second team getting 33%, and the third group getting the remaining 17%. Watson and Shedeur are both in that 50% pool together, meaning each of them is getting roughly 25% of the first team work while the split continues. But that is the current state, not the permanent state. Monken was very clear that the distribution is subject to change. He said, and this is the line you need to remember, as camp goes on and you start to see less rotation, if you start to see individual players at every position getting more reps with the first team, that is your sign. That is your indicator. That is the scoreboard. So, what does that mean in practical terms? It means the moment you start seeing Shedeur taking more first-team snaps than Watson, or Watson taking more than Shedeur, that's Monken telling you who he's leaning toward as his starter. You don't need an official announcement. You don't need a press conference. You just need to watch the rep distribution shift. And Monken himself told you to watch for it. Now, here's where it gets particularly interesting. Monken also addressed the four-quarterback situation in Cleveland. All four passers, Watson, Shedeur, Dillon Gabriel, and Taylon Green, are in camp competing, and Monken said something that most people glossed over, but I think deserves attention. He pointed out that minor injuries are part of training camp. Guys go down with sore shoulders or bumped knees, and suddenly the backup who is getting limited reps finds himself with the first team making plays. He said you never know how it's going to go at any position.
That is a reminder that this competition could shift at any moment for any reason. Shedeur could have a massive practice and Monken's hand could be forced. Watson could tweak something and be limited for a few days, giving Shedeur an extended run with the ones. The preseason games are coming, and Monken confirmed starters will play. Every single one of those games is a referendum on this competition. What I'm watching for over the next 2 weeks of camp is simple. I want to see the rep distribution. I want to see whether Watson cleans up the interception issues or whether day one was a preview of things to come. I want to see Shedeur with the first team, how he handles the speed of the NFL game with the starters around him, how he reads defenses, how he responds when things go wrong. That is what separates good training camp quarterbacks from real starters. And based on everything I have seen so far, the day one tape, the day two reports, Monken's words, the organizational language around Shedeur all spring, I think the arrow is already pointing in one direction, and it is not pointing at number 4. Here's what we know. Day one of Browns training camp is in the books. Deshaun Watson, the $230 million quarterback, the man with 3 first-round picks attached to his name, came out and threw back-to-back interceptions in 11-on-11 drills. No pads, first day, 2 picks. The unofficial count had him finishing with 15 completions, 11 incompletions, and 2 turnovers in a session that every single person on that practice field watched. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders, the 5th-round pick, the guy who slid down the draft board while people said he was not ready, went out and made plays, clean throws, good decisions, connections with receivers, the poise that his coaches have been talking about all offseason showing up on day one when it counted. Then, Todd Monken stood at a podium and handed you the formula in plain language. He said the players decide who the starter is. He said his eyes are the judge and the play is the jury. He said preconceived notions about contracts and history do not factor into his evaluation. And he told you that the rep distribution is the scoreboard, that the guy getting more first-team work as camp progresses is the guy he sees as his quarterback. And then Deion Sanders showed up on day 2 in his cowboy hat and sat there on the sideline and watched his son take first-team reps and find his rhythm and walk off the field afterward. And that image, that quiet, powerful image of a father watching his son compete at the highest level after everything they built together, said something that no press conference quote ever could.
This competition is real. Monken is not going to hand a starting job to a quarterback who's throwing interceptions in non-padded drills when a younger, fresher, hungrier option is right there making plays. That would not just be bad football, it would be career-defining bad football for a brand new head coach who has waited his whole life for this opportunity. Here's the part that the doubters are going to have a hard time with going forward. The argument against Shedeur has always been that he needs time, he needs a supporting cast, he's not ready. Well, Monken said the Browns have shored things up on the offensive line and added weapons on the perimeter. The supporting cast excuse is gone. The supporting cast argument does not hold anymore. The organization built around him. The organization said his growth this offseason was phenomenal, and now the competition is happening in real time, and the field is already giving you the answer. The question is no longer whether Shedeur Sanders can compete for this job. He is competing for it, right now, in front of the coaching staff, the front office, and every camera in Cleveland. The question is whether the people who have been doubting him, the analysts, the commentators, the fans who wrote him off based on a 3-4 rookie record on a 15-12 team with no weapons, are willing to look at what the field is showing them and update their opinion. Because the field does not have an agenda. The field doesn't care about draft rounds or guaranteed contracts or narrative arcs. The field just tells you who's better on a given day. And on day one of Cleveland Browns training camp, the field said Shedeur Sanders. This story is far from over. We have an entire camp ahead of us. We have preseason games where starters will play and where this competition will be put under the brightest lights it's seen yet. We are going to cover every single development right here, every rep distribution shift, every standout practice, every moment that moves this competition in one direction or the other. But the opening chapter has been written, and it belongs to the kid from the 5th round who moved to Cleveland, put in the work all offseason, showed up on day one ready to compete, and let the field do the talking. The field spoke. Pay attention to what it said.